Yeah, whether she sees it as an opportunity to launch off or press in.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Are we gonna just be like,
Hey everyone, you're listening to an episode.
and then afterwards we'll be like, and today we're celebrating 1 million downloads. And then we're saying thank you. I'm just trying to figure out how we transition into that.
I don't know. Let's just see what we
happens.
do.
Okay.
Hey everyone, you're listening to another episode of the Lead Stories podcast, where we believe that everyone has influence.
And when you're intentional with your influence, then you are a leader. I'm Pastor Steph.
And I'm Joe Saxton. Good to be with you.
We're so glad to be with you.
Woohoo!
Because we are having a pretty big celebration today.
A very big celebration today.
I feel like I want you to be able to say it, but you want me to be able to say it.
No, I was holding a moment's silence.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
1
million
downloads.
Woohoo!
Joe's round of applause has become a part of our experience.
Okay.
People can see it if they're watching.
On YouTube.
On
I'm kind
YouTube.
of sorry, but I'm not really.
We hit 1 million downloads earlier this month.
We did.
That means, and that's not even necessarily streaming, which sometimes doesn't count quite that same way.
I did not know that information.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, but the most important thing is that it's a milestone that's made possible by the people who are listening to this.
Yes, it is.
So thank you.
And I think it's worth, I know, like, you and I listen to podcasts, so we know that others may gather this amount of people in a month.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And all these things. However, we wanted to mark it because I think it's important to acknowledge these are 1 million downloads, all about leadership.
All about leadership with 2 women who are really passionate about leadership.
Yeah. And for that reason, we're partying.
Yeah. And absolutely. I mean, there always could be more. There always could be. But it's just like, celebrate your own wins, man.
Yeah.
So this is a win.
Yeah, this is our win.
And it's all of yours, too. Everyone who's listening to this is because of you.
That's so true.
We're so thankful. And I think it's appropriate that we're sharing this on Thanksgiving weekend here in the United States, at least. Thanksgiving can mean a lot of things, but we decided it means thank you. Yeah. You all.
That's so good.
We're so grateful. And I think we had like a cheesy moment just a few weeks ago where I was like, I'm so glad we get to do this, which is not a typical Enneagram 8 thing to kind of be.
It isn't.
Kind of in like a little bit of a dreamy place. But I think it's a huge privilege. So
yeah, it's a gift.
It's
really
a gift. Yeah, because we'll share some of this I think today, but just because it's meant a lot to us, but it's also meant a lot to a lot of you, and you've shared that with us, and that is really priceless. So we're so thankful. We would love for you to help us mark this moment.
Yes.
By doing 3 things.
Love you to tag a friend, like on Instagram or Lead Story, or not on Lead Stories, about Lead Stories, or on Facebook or Twitter or wherever your socials find their joy.
Yeah, somebody that maybe you think, you know what, I think they maybe are on the fence of stepping into really owning being a leader, maybe by the definition that we often give about being people of influence, or maybe someone who just started getting into podcasts. Yeah. You know those people.
Let them know this one.
Let them know,
This one's been here.
If you think it'd be helpful for them.
You can share your favorite episode, an episode that has meant something to you. So similar to the tagging, but and tagging someone on our space or on your places. But share, let people know about it, whether it's on social media or whether it's just somebody you know and you're doing so at work. Share an episode that's been meaningful that you think could help somebody else, and let them know it's there. We want to share the resources that we have. This is one way you can do that.
Yeah.
And the other way.
And the third thing is to review this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. So if it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, just to go in to review the podcast, because it's complicated, but it really does help the podcast get to people who might be looking for it, who don't even know that they're looking for it.
Totally. And I know if it's familiar to you, then you've always known it's been around and you assume everybody else does. But there are a lot of podcasts out there.
Yeah.
And wonderfully so. But we would like to make sure that we can do all we can on our part to let people know it exists. So if you could help us with that, that'd be amazing too. Send in your reviews on all of those spaces.
So tag, share, review. Tag a friend who might be interested. Share an episode you might love, and
review on the said channels.
Yeah. That would be just such a great way to help us celebrate this important moment.
That would be like our 1 million download present.
Yeah.
Gift.
That's what we'd like for our birthday. Wait.
Podcast day. Download day.
Download day. For our download day, we would love for you to tag, share, or review, or all 3. Thank you. Anyway, today we thought to commemorate this moment, we would share a few things.
Yeah, we wanted to kind of look back a little bit at what we've learned and what we've seen, and some of it's just kind of what was your favorite episode, that kind of stuff, but also reflect on what out of what we're learning and what we're seeing is still important for today.
Yeah, definitely.
As each of us, not just Steph and I, but all of you who are listening, are putting into practice what it means to be intentional with your influence.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're sharing some of the lessons learned and what they speak to the bigger story of us all leading in our various spaces.
Yeah, if we really wanted to create tension, we should tell people that at the end of this episode, you and I are both going to, at the same time, reveal whether we want this podcast to keep going or not, and see if we're both on the same page. But that wouldn't be real because we already know we're going to keep doing the podcast. So you know what? No tension there. We're going to keep doing it. So the next 1 million downloads are going to be awesome. And thank you for the first 1 million.
Yeah.
So there's no tension there. But we are going to share 3 of our favorite series.
Yeah.
And 3 things that we've learned in this 3 years of doing.
Oh,
so we're
all
almost
the threes.
Yes, we're almost at 3 years. So that's kind of another part of our birthday. So in January, it'll be 3 years. 1 million downloads and 3 favorite series, 3 things we've learned.
Okay.
3.
Well, should we start?
3. Yeah, let's do it. What would you say? What would you say for the first one of the 3 series? So we've had seasons, but inside the seasons, there's been series that are anywhere from like 3 episodes to
a long one,
sometimes a little
coaching.
bit more than it should have been. Right. We're learning. That's one thing we learned.
When I was thinking of it, I automatically came on to Lead On.
Yeah.
And that was in fall 2017. That was a series that became a season, I think.
I think so too.
And we didn't intentionally do it that way, but the cultural climate was such, and the tensions we saw, not just in the States, but in different parts of the world, led us to keep on asking the question, and as we interacted with you, to keep on reflecting on the question, what does it look like to lead on through anxious times?
Yep.
And what does it look like for us to be a non-anxious presence as leaders in whatever space we're in, be it the home, the community, the church, the corporate space, as entrepreneurs. And I loved it because of the resilience it called and invited us to. I think leadership does that. That sometimes when there aren't quick answers, when there aren't easy answers, the only answer is that you lead on. Yeah. So in some ways it became, yes, it was a series, yes, it was a season, but it was a declaration of intent for how we as leaders function.
Definitely, yep. So then the second one that stuck out to us was the Stigmas series, which was in the spring of 2017. And we talked about, there's stigmas, things that often are misinterpreted or are holding people back, are things that, however you want to define that. There's many, but we chose 3.
And actually we chose them because we asked everybody.
That's true.
We actually put it out to the listeners and we asked you, what did you think the top stigmas were? And so in many ways, we just spoke to and reflected on the things that you gave us, which was amazing.
Right.
Joy, 3 things. The first one was strong women. The next one was race, and the final one was mental health. I'm not even sure if that was the order.
No, but I don't remember, but those were the 3 things.
But those were the 3.
And
we lost a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying, I don't know if we've said it that clearly on the podcast, but we aren't necessarily like counting every single thing, but we do try to pay attention to the overall stats so that we kind of know how that guides us in just understanding where people are at. Because it's hard. We don't really know that much information about everybody. I think we should do a survey in this.
Yeah, we know kind of where you are, kind of.
Yeah, we know location.
Geographically.
We'd love to do a survey. So if that comes out, please fill it out. But I think it was it was more than clear that we lost people when we talked about these 3
By
subjects.
the thousands.
Which I think goes by definition with the concept of a stigma. That's exactly what a stigma does. It causes people to disengage.
Yeah.
But
it was good. It was good to do.
Yeah.
It was important, and it was important because it was stuff you guys selected and shared, and what those things meant for leadership. What does it mean to lead as a strong woman? How do we do? And it was a spring 2017 series, so we were looking at race, and looking at race continually is an important thing actually as leaders, but it was a distinctly tense time. And then the question of mental health, and I was just really humbled by some of the people who were willing to share their stories during that series as well, and to interview them on all of those stigmas.
Absolutely, both men and women. We talked about how men can support strong women and be allies, and and we have no regrets from that choice, and for even losing the listeners, however that looks like. I have no regrets. Do you have any regrets?
No, and I think it's a reality of leadership as well, that there are hard things and there are challenging parts, and
it's tempting to try to avoid them at times.
It's tempting in leadership to want to be liked, and obviously I don't want to be hated, and I don't want to be I don't want to put people off for no reason. That's not what we're trying to do, and that's counterproductive. However, when you're trying to lead through, and it's no surprise to me that Lead On was a series that came on not long after that.
Right.
But when you're trying to lead through scenarios, you can't pretend things aren't happening right in front of you. And these were some of the things that were happening right in front of us.
Yeah, definitely. I think, Lead On came right after that, and, leading through anxious times, because a signal of people checking out is anxiety. That's why some people might check out, is makes them anxious.
Yeah,
it's not just that they disagree or something.
No, I think it was just we want to think about happy things.
Yep, yeah, and I understand that.
And we would.
Yeah, and there's other happy podcasts that we both listen to.
Yeah,
and we try to be happy sometimes too. Yay, 1 million downloads. Anyway, okay. So then the third series, we have a lot of fun. To be completely honest, we're not just saying that. The third series that stuck out to us was Tools of the Trade. Tools of the Trade. And this whole time we've been doing lead stories, there's been this heart behind it for both of us to give tools to people.
Yeah.
And so if you go to our website, leadstoriesmedia.com, you see all these resources, and many of them are tools. Seeing those as wanting to get those things in people's hands.
Yeah.
And so we thought, what if we shared some of the tools that have been really crucial for us in leadership? And so we shared maybe four
or five,
yeah.
and I think we probably started doing things on video at that point as well.
Yeah, there was a couple of videos. We made a video of the SWOT analysis.
Yeah, we looked excellent.
I think that those are all on our resource page and on our YouTube channel.
And what I loved about this series was the reality of needing tools.
Yeah.
That leadership isn't just the inspiring thing, but actually that we wanted to do the podcast because we wanted to share some of the how-tos.
Yes.
And often what we feel disqualifies us from leading is I don't know how. And we wanted to kind of say, you know what, all of us need tools.
Yeah.
All of us, if we're going to step into our leading and be intentional about it, there are tools that help us get there, and we don't have to expect to know it all and be able to do all these things straight away. But if we learn the tools that might help us and serve us, we may see a greater effectiveness in our leadership.
Absolutely.
So that was great.
Absolutely. Well, so those were the three. We'll put those in the show notes, and people can link to them. And if you want to go back and listen to them, maybe one of them is one of your favorite episodes that you want to share.
Or maybe they were your worst.
Or maybe they were one of the worst.
Well, are there some worthy honorable mentions that you can think of?
I feel like the Wilderness series was an honorable mention.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
It was in the very first season. It was in the very first season, and it still, since it was in the first season, it does have the most downloads of any.
Yeah.
And we did end up rebroadcasting it at one point, and since then I think we've kind of decided we'd rather just point people back. But it was like, people were like, I listened to it all again. It was, because everybody finds themselves in wilderness seasons at times. That's just a part of life. You see it in the meta-narrative of scripture, and you see it in the meta-narrative of each of our lives. So I just think it's real. That's one. Would you have another?
I think the leader behind the scenes.
Oh yeah.
The leader behind the scenes is good. And I think
I told people some stuff.
Yeah. We interviewed each other. We haven't done that for a while.
We should do that again.
We should do that again sometime. And I think it in some ways for me, it kind of explains the tone of our podcast, period.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That we are inviting people to have a tough talk most of the time.
Welcome. Come on in.
We're inviting people to really wrestle with significant issues, both internally or externally. So, yeah, I like that one.
Okay, so let's talk about 3 things we learned. We've learned a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
But I think what we tried to think about was big picture, like what have we seen over these last 3 years that we weren't necessarily expecting? Yeah. So the first thing is, I would say we thought we were starting a podcast and we didn't know anything about what that was going to be.
No, it really wasn't that well planned, friends.
What we learned was we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
No, it was something we felt prompted to do. What we learned was that what we were actually really launching was basically like a multimedia resource company. Yeah, and I love that because I think with calling and vocation and all of those and purpose, we have this bit where we're like, that's what I'm called to do. Yeah. And as you begin to attend to it, there are these other things that can unfold as part of the journey. Yeah. And that you wouldn't have worked out from beforehand. So right. I love that was reflected in how we built this podcast and beyond. Yeah, so if you go to the website leadstoriespodcast.com, you'll just see all the podcasts that we've ever done. Yeah. But that's really the flagship podcast of what we call Lead Stories Media. Maybe someone's wondering, oh, that's why they call the website leadstoriesmedia.com. Yes, that is why. If you go on there, you'll see that there's actually 4 podcasts now, including the Dream of You podcast that came out with your book, the Stay Curious podcast that came out with my book, and which is still running. We're still adding episodes, and then the Critical Journey podcast, which we are producing for my friend Janet Hagberg, who's also an author. That book. So they're all three the title of books.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Which is kind of handy.
Yeah, so the Lead Stories podcast is a flagship podcast. We've got a whole page full of digital resources that people can either are free and a few that are very affordable, just to help us pay for. They really are sponsoring the podcasts and all of the resources. And then training and online events and webinars and things that we've done as well. So that's exciting. I think it's exciting to say that we were unsure of what it meant to start a podcast, and that trickled into something else we were totally unsure that was happening, which is a multimedia resource company, Lead Stories Media.
Who knew?
Who knew?
We didn't.
We
That's
didn't.
for sure.
but here we are at year 3 saying we do now. It is now emerged as a multimedia resource company for leaders.
And again, partly because I'm reflecting on this for us, but for our listeners as well, I think it reminds me to stay open. Do you know what I mean? To stay open as I'm leading on what could be, not unrealistic, but open to the pathway of leadership, which I would love to be a straight line, but is often a long and winding road.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And often takes you, it can cause new opportunities to be uncovered along the way.
Absolutely.
And I think that's just important for us as leaders to always be open to new possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, what was number 2?
Number two, I think, comes out of conversations we've had with people around the world, actually, and in different spaces. And I think it would be summed up in the phrase that I have used and overused to death on this podcast by Marion Wright Edelman. And I do so unapologetically because it's so true. And where she is mentioning in the context of kids, you can't be what you can't see.
You can't be what you can't see.
And others have used the same quote since, but every time it's been used, it's been in the context of representation.
Yeah.
And I think I was struck, I think it hit me most when I wasn't in this country, actually, because I don't think about how far the podcast goes. But when you get emails or you meet people who have said, this has been a lifeline to me, when you meet other women leaders who say that the fact that you are women who are leading and doing these things has helped me unpack my leadership, has been a powerful thing, or that a church planter like me or a writer like me, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, or a businesswoman like me,
That sense of representation has been a really powerful thing.
The emails that I get when on a couple of occasions the podcast has not gone out on Mondays. People who are like, this is my Monday motivation. I don't know what to do on my commute because I need to hear this podcast.
Where are you?
And I think we all agree that it's not a need, and they knew that too. But what they were trying to say was that this is an important part of my life. Yeah. And I think that that's something we've learned, is that this connection through this podcast and the other resources and media have been that significant, and that's super humbling.
Yeah.
I think it's super humbling, and we're trying to be, when we say we can't be what we can't see, we're trying to be the best version of ourselves as leaders who happen to be women. And the fact that can be a lifeline to people is incredible. I'm just so grateful.
Yeah. I think it reminds me as well that there is plenty of room.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's plenty of room for us to have a breadth of voices and how important it is. I think it reminded me again of rather than us looking and not seeing ourselves there and thinking, is there any place for me there? Saying, I need to make sure there's a place for somebody like me there. It's important, it's valid, it's needed.
Right.
That we all bring distinctives, we all bring unique pieces. And I would encourage us for our leadership teams or our companies or whatever to make sure that, just to remember that representation matters.
Yeah.
Because it's actually a gift, it's not an obligation, it's a gift that actually, all the stats show, but all the data shows it's more than just a cute idea. It actually brings something to your business and stuff. And so to see people affirmed in who they are and the way that they're wired.
Yeah. There's nothing like that.
It's just, it's incredible.
Yeah. So then I think third and finally, I think what we've learned is, we stepped into a unique cultural moment at this time, 3 years ago. And as we've continued in this time, there's this moment that we have stepped into that I think we're finding it difficult to totally put into words, but that there is not only this opportunity for us to be be ourselves in front of people. You know, I'm always talking about how everybody lives out loud. It's just some people have a louder volume, and people like us have loud voices, but also loud platforms. You know, if you're using that illustration, and that's part of our calling, and not everyone's called to that. But what I think we have recognized is since the beginning of this podcast, we knew that representation mattered, but we also knew that there's people who don't look like us, who aren't like us, who also need to hear from people like us.
Yeah.
That representation matters because people who see someone else need to see somebody else doing something. So when there's we've always wanted this podcast to be one that could resource men, for instance, that could resource people who are older than us or younger than us.
Absolutely.
That could resource people who are not in ministry, even though you and I tend to have primary ministry spaces, but we do other stuff as well. We've always wanted that to be true, and I think it has been. And so we've been kind of talking about how it's women talking about leadership, but it's for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
leadership development by women for everyone.
Leadership development by women for everyone. And sometimes people might say, oh, but you're often talking about things and how they apply to women. Well, yeah, that's what it feels like when it's a leadership podcast with 2 men for everyone, you know, and that's fine, and that's good. And that's actually what takes representation from being a moment to a new cultural experience.
Yeah.
It shifts from, wow, I have now seen a woman do blank, or I have now seen a person of color in this setting, to we now embrace what it means to experience seeing people of color on the big screen, to experience having women lead in these spaces, to experience women who are younger, who are able to encourage women who are in a generations ahead. Whatever it is, it's taking it to that next level in a way.
And I think it recognizes that it adds value to your leadership. You know, again, these aren't radical concepts. These are data understood and driven facts.
Yeah.
Now that when we are learning from different sources and when we have people on our teams, that it fosters innovation and brainstorming and all that kind of stuff. When you have attended to your D&I, your diversity and inclusion and stuff. And in this case, I would encourage all of us to be listening to voices of people who don't look like us, who don't share our lives, who don't share our journeys. Why? Because it will cause us to think, and we need leaders who are critical thinkers, not critical people. Do you know what I mean? But who are able to critique and understand and observe the world in which they're in and learn how to lead confidently through it. And it would be a shame if we assumed, like I would never assume that because the guy is white, that I have nothing to learn from him. No. And neither does the culture at large assume that. I remember having a conversation years ago, in publishing conversation with someone, and they were talking about books that were written and stuff, and they named all the names, and I said, have you noticed all of those people are the same? Mm-hmm. And are we saying
they might
then,
have some different
oh no, they were
perspectives.
great, they were fantastic. It was never about the content or anything like that. They were fantastic. And it's like, have you ever heard what leading looks like from somebody else's body? Or anybody else's
social strata
or culture or ethnicity? And what are we missing when we don't do that in the world in which we live?
When I was in college, during my first year of college, I got to write a paper for one of those like introduction to college things where it was like, you need to name 10 of your mentors. Okay, now I was 18. And so everybody, when we get the assignment, we're like, well, have we had 10 mentors? Yeah. And then what they say is, a mentor is someone who has shared their experience with you, taught you some things. You might not have ever met them.
Yeah.
Some of your mentors are people who maybe still aren't even alive today, who you did know personally, or maybe were somebody from history. And so we were to pick the 10 people who had influenced us the most in our lives. And I just wonder about how, if everybody sat down and wrote down the 10 people who have influenced them the most in their life, if it would look and represent the diversity of the space they find themselves in now.
Wow.
And what a challenge we might offer to other people in our life. Not to say don't read those 10 books by those people who are similar, but if you read 100 books, would they be, 10, 10, 10, 10? You know, and I just think that's a great exercise, just to say, when I think about the people who have influenced me the most in positive ways in my life, the top 10 people who have been mentors, influencers in my life, I follow them the most, I've read about them the most, people I actually know in real life. How similar, if you were to kind of draw a circle around difference, like how close to the same circle of age, race, sex, background, etc., worldview, political perspective, all of those things would they be? I understand that all of us would have some similarities with those folks because there's maybe reasons why they were so influential to us. But part of being mature as a leader is starting to say, hey, out of those 10, I wonder if I can, if a couple other people could bop up to the top, and those other 2 are still influential, but they're not my top 10 anymore because I've intentionally been invested in by these other folks who maybe will never hear that they were investing in me, or maybe are people I actually intentionally humbly ask for them to invest in my life, and what can I do for you if you're willing to invest in me. I think that would be a gift to us if people were to think about that. So that's actually at the core of why we want what we're doing to be a multimedia resource company by women for everyone. And because that's the part of that we get to play.
Yeah.
And we also think about who is influencing us as we do that. So that's our hope for the next 1 million downloads. That's where we're going. We want to continue to be podcasts and resources and
hopefully
training and events, more podcasts, but all of it being, led by us too as women, but really for everyone. And so when you're thinking about who to tag, it doesn't have to necessarily be another woman. No. It doesn't have to necessarily be a person of faith. Maybe it's somebody who could be encouraged by the perspective. We are welcoming different perspectives, even though we both come from a Christian perspective. When you're thinking about who to share, like the fact that you might share this on your social media, just think about the different people that you connect with online. And I'm sure some of you have friends from work or other places that follow you, but you'd be willing to say, hey, this was helpful, this episode on imposter syndrome or whatever.
Oh gosh, yeah, we did talk imposter syndrome. Yeah. Good times, friends, good times.
And then it would just be so helpful for us if you were to review it, so that people who maybe are looking for this, don't even know they're looking for it, would end up connecting. So
just spread the word.
Tag, share, review. That would be our present that we would love for our soon-to-be birthday and our 1 million downloads. It's been crazy. Yeah, it's been fun,
and it feels, it's weird to say, but it feels good to recognize that there are 1 million downloads where people are, and obviously I feel called to leadership. I'm passionate about leadership. I'm excited about people who get excited about leadership or who are curious about leadership. So to hear that, knowing that's been our explicit leading beat the whole time, that people are gathering, and I listen to all kinds of podcasts, ones which are kind of narration, ones that are conversation, all that kind of thing. But it's meaningful to recognize what it feels like, 1 million seeds.
Yeah.
1 million seeds into leaders or into a leader's perspective. And I'm looking forward to see what impact that is for human flourishing.
Oh, I'm going to give my one emotion to this today.
Okay, good.
My one Enneagram 8 emotion is gratitude for all of you listening.
There she goes.
And for you, Joe.
Oh, thanks. Oh, am I meant to feel the same? Okay,
yeah.
Sorry. Well, I was saving my emotion for later.
Oh. For when we eat lunch after this?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, everybody, thank you for being a part, whether you just started listening recently or been with us all 3 years. Thank you for being a part of the 1 million downloads.
If you've been here for all 3 years. Thank you for sticking
around. Thank you for sticking around. And we hope to offer the same and more of what we did this last 3 years.
We're going to keep working hard,
keep taking it up a notch.
Digging deep. Mm-hmm. And we would love to hear from you. If there are things you'd love us to cover, questions you have, just get in touch and we will see what we can do. And if we have no answers, we'll probably tell you that too.
Yep, definitely. Well, everybody, we will be back with you next week
with another episode of Lead Stories, friends.
Well, it's going to be about hello, goodbye, which
we didn't mention as one of the,
it was the thing that really launched us. So it's exciting to talk about it next week and get people prepped for.
It's that time of year.
The hello, goodbye, getting ready to say goodbye to 2019 and hello to 2020.
And we're starting kind of early.
Yes.
But it's good because life gets kind of busy.
We've learned it's helpful to start early. So we will be back next week
with some stuff.
With that, we're thankful for all of you. Bye.
Bye.
Nice.
Is it 12:19 already?
Yeah. They're having food out there.
They are. Can you steal it?
Yeah, we can steal it. Do you want to steal it?
No, it's quicker.
The biggest thing is then we have to just make sure we bow out because I don't, no offense to Ashish or whoever's leading it, but I don't want to go to